Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Discovering Bob Dylan podcast here on Taste Like Music. Here with you always, Dylan Seavey, myself, Joe Stackerwald. Last episode, we cruised through a couple albums covering 1971 to 1973, kind of breaking with our usual one album per show. But a couple slight albums. You had Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, which was soundtrack, couple originals, couple, soundtrack songs. And you had Columbia's Revenge, 1973's Dylan, which was totally unauthorized and consisted mostly of outtakes and things that he probably wasn't ever planning on using. But Columbia put it out there for a record. And, I didn't hate either of them. I think I was maybe a little pleasantly surprised by Dylan. Kind of just felt like maybe a slightly lesser self-portrait, but nothing embarrassing. Not nearly as bad as the critics would have you believe. And I think you share in that opinion with me. It's not like the worst thing you've ever heard.
Not at all. No.
So today we are back to a real, fully original Bob Dylan album, 1974. So it's been 4 years, basically, give or take a couple of months, since his last real album. He went in to the studio with the band, which also coincided with his first tour since 1966, which is hard to believe. Like an 8 year gap seems like literally forever for someone like Bob Dylan, who's just like cranking out albums one after another. So anticipation was high for this one. And I don't know what the impetus was for like getting back in the studio, getting back on the road. Just he missed it. He was divorcing, or the marriage was in trouble with Sarah, and he just wanted to get some diversion in his life. Do you know anything about it?
So I think, and by I think I know, that they just got together with Dylan there in the summer of '73 to run through some tunes. They decided to go back up to upstate. Robbie and Bob got in touch, and I think they just ended up kind of playing for hours and hours, running through a bunch of stuff, and that sort of reinvigorated both of them, and that was the impetus for recording the record. And then I think from there it just sort of exploded. And yeah, Dylan having a good time at Bangladesh and then playing with them there at the end of '71 going to '72, I think probably also played a part. As far as I know, there wasn't anything too much past that. But again, the real Dylan historians in the comments can let us know.
I look forward to that, reading all the comments very carefully, as I always do. So they get together, they make Planet Waves, and I don't know, it's been so long since we talked about a real Dylan record. Maybe we should just jump right in, get my thoughts on this bad boy. Long story short, I think it's a very good album. I was impressed, surprised a little bit because it's another one you really don't hear mentioned much, and maybe because it's on Asylum, maybe because he doesn't really play any of these songs. None of these made before the flood, like not a single song from the album that they made together made the live album, which seems very odd. Like, I don't know why. Maybe these were like too personal for him. Maybe it was, the impending fallout of his marriage. But I don't know why none of these songs were played because I think they're all quite good. It's a pretty straight record. It's just, Dylan and the band playing rock and roll. Everybody, I think, is in really good, shape, in great tone. It's very consistent. The only, like minor quibbles, two versions of Forever Young, which is odd. The slow version and the fast version. I don't know if I love that. It seems like just a throwaway kind of thing, but I think they're different enough that it's not like a total like, what the hell were they thinking with that? And there's no Dogs Run Free, no weird duets with Johnny Cash. It's just a very good, fun record. The organ sounds like a carnival. I'm sure the microphone smelled like a beer here. I think it kicks off really nicely with On a Night Like This. It's a good kind of fun sex song. It's a little, a little saucy from Bob in there. Love the harmonica. It's just so much pep and vigor in it. Garth Hudson's organ and Richard Manuel's clavinet on Tough Mama. Really like that. That's like a real strutting song. Robertson's guitar, that like strangled tone he gets on Going, Going, Gone is awesome. He's just like wringing every inch of life out of that thing. That like blowing sound. Whatever he's doing is really cool. I don't think I've ever heard that before. And Dylan's vocals phenomenal. I think this might be one of my favorite Dylan vocal performances yet. Really, it's like all the Dylanisms kind of got lost on the wayside on this one, and maybe it's just because of the way it was recorded, and there's no real producer. It's just kind of them rocking out. But I think he sounds really good on this, especially Going, Going, Gone, Hazel, super pretty. Love the piano on Dirge, a real tour de force performance there. Robertson Spanish kind of leaning guitar, a real nice accompaniment. Another minor quibble. This is a minor quibble. I could use some more backing vocals from the band. I mean, Christ, they have three excellent singers in the band. And I think you get like a hint of backing vocals, and they're not even credited on the album. They were in the Dylan book, and I knew I heard something. I was like, it's not credited, but they have like little question marks in the big Dylan book that I read. So they're there on Going, Going, Gone, just a hint. But I could use some more of that. Like, come on, like give me more of the band. Like they're playing great, but I could use some harmonies backing up Bob here, a little more of that. But yeah, slight quibble, really. You Angel You, great bass performance. Dylan doesn't like the song. He describes his lyrics as dummy lyrics. And I hate when artists do that to their own songs. It's not like Visions of Johanna or something, but it's a fun pop song. Like it doesn't have to be like this heavyweight work of art to be a good tune. Never Say Goodbye is great. Love the Zeppelin-esque intro, that slippery electric guitar that comes in from Roy Robertson. And Wedding Song, real nice, send off for the album, maybe a send off for his marriage. I'm not sure, but Bob on guitar and harmonica. And yeah, a real nice way to close the album. I guess this isn't like a work of art. Like maybe his lyrics aren't quite up to the normal standards. Maybe they're just a little less profound here. Maybe it's too personal, but I don't know. I think this is a very strong album. I think I like it more than New Morning. It's kind of on the level of Nashville Skyline for me. They're neck and neck. I might like Nashville Skyline a little bit more, but I don't know. I was surprised by how much I like this one, and yeah, I just think it's a good album. It's a good rock and roll album, and maybe that's all he needed in 1974. So yeah, good work, Bob and the band on this one.
It's pretty amazing. We don't share notes or anything before. We just kind of raw dog these shows, really. We just kind of hope that the other person's going to come prepared. But so much of what you just said are also in my notes, so I'll do my best not to sound like a broken record. I'm really, really happy you like this record. It's possible you like this record more than I do. I enjoy this record, but of all the records that I would say I enjoy, I'm not sure there's one that I wish I liked better more than Planet Waves, because the band and Bob Dylan are two of my all-time favorite acts. They have so much cool history together. And the fact that they finally, after all these years, got into a professional recording studio at the same time should be a dream come true. And I do like it, but it's never quite lived up to expectations for me for a few reasons. I don't think many of these songs, if any of them, are all-timers, which I know that a lot of people would disagree with because we got two versions, like you said, of Forever Young. I've never loved it as much as many of his classics. I much prefer the demo recording that closes out the Biograph box set. As good as the band always were, to me, their studio output was never truly as magical as it was on their first two records. And although they sound very good here, they don't sound bad by any means. I don't know if they elevate it to true greatness. And on top of that, you've got an ample opportunity to capture at least Rick Danko and Levon Helm singing harmonies alongside Bob, if not Richard. Obviously Richard's voice deteriorated a bit through the years, but still really good. They hardly sing at all. So it is, that's always been frustrating to me. But I do like it, even though I don't think many of these songs are all timers. I don't think any of them are bad. My two favorites at the moment are Going, Going, Gone and Dirge. We are essentially just one studio album removed from Bob talking about all this domestic bliss. And now we're seeing cracks again, kind of foreshadowing of some upcoming records. And I think both of those songs are so devastating. And like you said, great vocal performances. We are still in that realm of my favorite Dylan voice. And yeah, Robbie's playing on Dirge is so damn good. And I think the band do get pretty damn close to their classic sound on Tough Mama, which grooves so well. More great vocals, probably Bob's best harmonica performance on the record. Between that and On a Night Like This, and I've always loved that line in Tough Mama. I've gained some recognition, but I lost my appetite. I think that's such a cool little lyric. But yeah, On a Night Like This and You Angel You, I think both great upbeat tunes. I think On a Night Like This, the perfect opener. Yep, wrote down, I love more good guitar work on Never Say Goodbye. And even though it's not my absolute favorite song on the record, I think that Wedding Song is really fascinating, kind of another big foreshadowing moment of the upcoming album, seemingly very earnest and yearning, but there's a reason that he's in a position to be yearning as much as he is. The one verse that always gets me on that one is, it's never been my duty to remake the world at large, nor is it my intention to sound a battle charge, because I love you more than all of that with a love that doesn't bend. And if there is eternity, I'd love you there again. Uh, he's pretty good. Um, it's really good stuff. And Planet Waves is a really good record. I think it's a very dependable record. Like you said, a very consistent record, very enjoyable. Songs are good, musicianship is solid, production by Rob Fraboni is very fine, pretty, uh, pretty basic, but good. I don't know, maybe I just need to hire some Rick Danko and Levon Helm soundalikes to add some background vocals and satisfy my own personal curiosity. But yeah, solid record. I'm really happy you liked it. This was another one going into it that I didn't know how you'd feel, but I know that your co-host Jason is a big fan of this one, so I'm sure he'll be very pleased to hear you thinking of it so highly.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key here is the expectations of it. I like the band, but by 1974, I didn't really like anything the band had done in 5 years. And, I'm not expecting that much from them. I like Bob Dylan, but I'm not, not the biggest Bob Dylan fan. That's why we're here. So expectations for me for this album, since it's not so highly regarded, were moderate, like, right here. So I was impressed. Yeah, this is like the Toyota Camry of Bob Dylan records. It's dependable. It's nothing too flashy, nothing too fancy. Just a good, solid record. Gets you where you need to go. I enjoyed it. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's that much more to talk about with this record. It doesn't have the lore. It doesn't have like the legacy. It's just an album played by some great musicians, and I think it is what it is, and I think we can all move on with our lives.
Yeah, I think the biggest lore or the biggest draw to it is the Dylan and the band combination. Because this is the only time, you have the basement tapes, but that was recorded in a basement, by a bunch of dudes who like kind of knew what they were doing. But this is the one time they're in a professional studio committing songs to tape, which is really cool. And And it's easy to also tie it in with the Before the Flood live album, which captures, for better or worse, a pretty basic approximation of the set list from their 74 tour. And it's good. I don't love Before the Flood. There are other Bob Dylan live albums that I think are much better, but it is very solid. Again, it's not my favorite era of the band, and I like Stage Fright and Cahoots actually both quite a bit. To me, neither of them are on the level of the first two albums, and I really love The Last Waltz, but that's this whole different beast. But they play very, very well on it. It's a very energetic record. It's Dylan's very shouty on it, which is kind of amusing. I think you might like it. We'll talk a little bit more about the tour the next year, the 75 tour, the Rolling Thunder Review. We should talk about that more in a couple episodes. But yeah, other than that, and you can argue that there's not as much lore with an album like New Morning too, but to me, again, just the themes on New Morning, I don't know if I want to call them fascinating, because how fascinating is happiness? Ooh, real fascinating. But um, if nothing else, I just think it's interesting because it feels like such a distinct snapshot. But yeah, Planet Waves, I think you've described it very, very well. I know I personally don't have too much more to say on it, but I and I think a lot of others will have a lot to say about the very big one that we've got coming up. And what's your experience with Blood on the Tracks? I assume you probably listened to it at least once when you were doing 75 albums of the year.
I have heard it a couple times. I don't know if I actually went back and listened to it for 75 because my 75 top five is all like 10 out of 10s for me. So I didn't feel the
Sure.
need to do any digging at all. So I may have
Because
missed
Blood
a
on the Tracks
thing.
could never be a 10 out of 10. That would be ridiculous.
No, not except for from All Music, Pitchfork, Q, Rolling Stone, Village Voice, basically every critic ever. So yeah, this is a big boy. This is a doozy. So it'll be interesting to see. I remember liking it, and I've heard Tangled Up in Blue bajillion times outside of the record itself, but I don't really remember much else about it. Um, so I'm going in pretty blind, pretty new to this one, and a lot of expectations here. Like there's a big weight. We haven't felt this since I don't even know. Highway 61, Blonde on Blonde, maybe. But this one, I mean, this is the one, like every album after it is, his best since Blood on the Tracks, This is like the touchstone of his 70s work, and everything after the 60s kind of all comes back to this one. So I'm a little scared, little frightened by this one and what I will feel and hear on here.
Yeah, it's the record that really, not that the other, New Morning and Planet Waves, I believe, were received somewhat well in the press, and both sold pretty well, but Blood on the Tracks is what really truly got him back in the good graces of critics, fans. It has a very, very particular legacy, a very, very strong and positive legacy. So yeah, I can understand why you would feel the way that you feel. But you felt this hesitation going into bringing it all back home, an album that you had historically been kind of like, I don't see what the big deal about this one is. You had a moment with it. You weren't maybe sure how you felt about Highway 61 coming back to it, but you still recognized it as very good. You felt good about Blonde on Blonde going back to it. I would really say going into this, I think you've done a great job of keeping an open mind so far. Like I said, we saw that with you revisiting the 60s albums. I think if you're open to this, the same thing can happen here with you liking and appreciating it more. maybe than you had before, although, like you said, you only have so much to go off of. And also, keep in mind the journey really that we've been through with Bob, the late 60s, the early 70s. Remember the place he was at during New Morning and even how he got to New Morning. And remember some of what we've heard on this album, the stuff he's talking about on Dirge, on Going, Going, Gone, on Wedding Song, on Hazel. This is setting the stage. It's very much a prequel, I think, in that way. If you remember that, I think it's gonna hit you like a ton of bricks. The lyrics on Blood on the Tracks, I don't know if there's anything really that can prepare you. I mean, it's very powerful. I'm trying not to tip my hand too much, but there's a reason that it has the legacy that it has. And I know that you are a fellow appreciator of Shoot Out the Lights by Richard and Linda Thompson. If I recall correctly, you're a fan of Tunnel of Love by Springsteen. Some of the other, you're not a fan of Tunnel of Love. See, I'm also not really a fan of Tunnel of Love. So we're both getting into trouble right here. But I'm the 80s hater, so of course I don't like Tunnel of Love. It sounds like a friggin' Phil Collins record. But people talk about those in the pantheon of great divorce albums, but there's a reason that Blood on the Tracks is put on the pedestal. So, I'm not going to tell you not to feel the weight of these expectations, but I'm pretty confident that if you go into it with the same mindset that you've gone into everything else, that you're going to come out of it taking quite a bit from it.
I'm very much looking forward to it, and I have been basically since we hit the 70s because yeah, I mean it is the divorce album, and I love a good divorce, a good, sad, kind of torn up inside kind of songwriting. I don't remember the sound of it very much, so and I know it's like not anybody like big, like there's no like big names on this album. It's just like Bob and a bunch of jabronis, Chris Webber on acoustic. Like who the hell's Chris Webber on acoustic guitar? So I'm that's very interesting to me. This one seems to have a lot of lore, obviously with the divorce, but even the recording itself and everything around it has like an extra layer of whatever the Bob Dylan magic that I've enjoyed so much so far through this journey. So should
It
be a good
is
one. I expect good things here.
it is pretty interesting. We are coming from there is truly not a lot to Planet Waves. Yeah, like you said, this is very much a case of Bob hadn't really made a record in a couple of, with respect to the work he put into Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, which he did put in work to it, but a full album of original compositions with lyrics and everything, been a few years and got together with the band and said, "Hey, this is Jellin, let's make something." And bam, you've got a record. And it's great. The results are awesome. The story behind Blood on the Tracks is much more interesting. We've got a last minute stop the presses to Columbia Records to change the whole thing. There's so much going into it other than just the songwriting. So yeah, we definitely we breeze through an episode about a pretty breezy record. If not thematically, just as an auditory experience, but we're gonna be putting in the work for this next one, but I'm really excited for you to hear this with fresh ears.
I'm gonna double my efforts. I'm gonna read this Dylan book twice. I'm gonna scour the internet for clues and symbolism and all this good stuff. And yeah, that'll be the next episode. It's gonna be a big one. Hopefully, it'll revive our flagging ratings because people just don't seem to care about these 70s albums as much. But this one will bring the people in. So I better like it because I don't want to take all the slings and arrows in the comment section.
One of these days, we're gonna truly have an album that you do not like, and I really do, and we'll get to fight, but I
Yeah,
don't think that's gonna happen yet.
probably not. Probably not even through the 70s. I feel like maybe some of the 80s stuff and the 90s stuff that he kind of gets back in good graces with the critics. I might not like as much, but we are far away from that. We are right in the middle of the 70s. What do you think about Planet Waves? Is it sort of just a, a little nibble of Bob and the band and maybe not quite up to expectations? Do you think it's a fine album full of good songs, good recording, fun playing, all that stuff? Leave your thoughts in the comments section, like this video, subscribe to the channel, check us out on social media, all that stuff. It's all in the description here. And yeah, be sure to check back next week. Blood on the Tracks, 1975, Bob Dylan's magnum opus. We'll be discussing and everything. We're gonna fine tooth comb. We're gonna take a magnifying glass. We're gonna get it all. Join us next time here on Discovering Bob Dylan podcast.